Sully's birth story. So this has taken me way longer to do than I was thinking, but newborn life. So we have some friends coming over for dinner and to meet Sully tonight, and I actually took a shower and brushed my teeth and put makeup on. So I was like, now or never. I'm gonna try and keep this video as short as I can. You know, I have about 5 friends that have done home birth, but in the grand scheme of things, a lot of our friends aren't familiar with home birth, and so I wanted to make this video to try and I guess just let people know my experience. So here we go. And I also don't think that I'm any more like woman or that I'm stronger because I home birth. I do not think that at all. No matter how your baby came out, whether it was vaginally, a C-section, with an epidural, without an epidural, we're all freaking badass warriors for doing what we did and for putting our bodies what we put them through. So just to get that out of the way, where to begin? So Sully was due on September 4th. That would have been exactly 40 weeks. And obviously in first-time moms and when you're not being induced, it's pretty typical to go over your due date. Like, we were anticipating him not to come until, I had guessed September 12th. Clearly I was very wrong. September 5th, we had a wedding at Orion. I already had it covered on my end so that I didn't have to be there just in case. And then it was probably like 9:30, Adam was there, and I was kind of honestly bored sitting at home and just kind of felt restless. And so I decided that I was gonna go help him close up. So I got to the venue about 9:30, 9:45, and we started. Once everything finished and the couple, did their exit, we started doing the breakdown, which is usually a lot of moving around, a lot of, we were checking on things, have to go to all the rooms, get all the trash. I don't know if being at the venue kind of helped kickstart things, but very good chance that it did. Adam and I got home about 11:30, and Adam got in bed, fell asleep right away. I got in bed a few minutes later. As soon as I laid down, I kind of started having a very, very mild period cramps, and I was kind of like laying there being like, okay, and then they would go away and then they would come back, and I was, I had prepped enough of, what to expect with my doula and our, childbirth classes that I knew that that could be a sign that things were gonna get started. They had told me try and, go to sleep if you can sleep through the initial, because it was, at this point, it was so mild that I was like, I might could go to sleep. But unfortunately, I think my adrenaline kicked in a little bit, and I was like, I'm just gonna get in the bath, try and relax. So I got out of bed and I went to, we have like a guest room with a bathroom. So it's a smaller bathtub. So I went and got in that bathtub so I could just fill it up real quick. Then Sully started moving like crazy, thrashing around, it seemed. And I kind of got a little nervous. I was like, I remember thinking like, should I call my midwife? Should I text her? Like, this is just, he had never moved around that much. But then it kind of stopped, and I would just feel him kind of like moving around like normal. Got out of the bathtub, and at this point it was like already like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, oh my God, I need to try and go to sleep. So I got back in bed, tried to go to sleep, and then that's when things started to, again, it still at this point was not painful. It was just, they were getting more intense to the point where I was like, I don't think I can sleep through this. Spoiler alert, I did not sleep at all until after Sully was born. So that was that was rough. So got out of bed at that point and went in our bathroom, which we have a bigger bathtub. So I filled that up really high so that I could kind of, be floating. Got in the bath, and the next like 3 hours, I really could not tell you how it went by so fast, but it did. I know I'm gonna get judged for this, but I love TikTok. I can literally sit on there and scroll for hours. It's just very entertaining. It's funny. It makes me laugh. And so I needed something that was like gonna be a distraction to me. What I would do is I was just scrolling through TikTok, was watching all the videos, laughing, and then if I would feel a contraction coming, I would go to my app that timed them. If you don't know, contractions only last a minute. So I would just ride it out. And at that point, again, it was still very mild. And then I would go back to TikTok and scroll, have a contraction, scroll. And the next thing I knew, it was like 5:30 in the morning. Got out of the bathtub, got in bed, and at that point, I didn't wake Adam up this entire time just because I was kind of in my zone, and there wasn't really at that point anything he could do. So, but I did at this point, I kind of, I got in bed and kind of woke him up, and I was like, guess what? I think I'm in labor. He was like, are you sure? We were just kind of asking me questions and stuff. And then just like people had talked about, I felt what felt like a little tiny water balloon. Just, I felt the little trickle going down my leg, so I knew that my water had broke. And it's not like in the movies where your water break and things are like, at that point I knew I had a long ways to go. But since my water did break, which again, if you're familiar with birth and how it works, it is kind of not as typical. It's not as typical to have your water break kind of randomly and then to go into labor. But I guess I kind of downplayed the fact that I was very much so already in labor and then my water broke. But either way, I called my midwife and to kind of fill her. I called my doula and my midwife. Both of them, asked me how, the pain was. And at that point it was still, again, just felt like period cramps, kind of mild, a little more intense than period cramps. But so my doula, which again, I'll explain, doulas have nothing to do with delivering babies. They're more of like your coach, your support person. Midwives are medically trained professionals when it comes to childbirth. My doula was going to come over first since she was going to be kind of there more for like the laboring part of the birth. So my doula, she's like, okay, go ahead and start timing them. Let me know. I told her I would call her back in like an hour. Adam went and took the dogs to the venue so that they could run around and get some energy out before the day started. Then my contractions started to get like 4 or 5 minutes apart. And so I called my doula again and she was like, I'm gonna go ahead and come over. Get to our house probably about 9:30. We start kind of, just going through the motions of, I would do some contractions on the birthing ball, and for me it was very comfortable to be on like all fours, and so I would do, kind of like we have an ottoman, and I would kind of sit on my knees and kind of lean over. And I'm gonna put some pictures over this. So my doula took all of these pictures. She's an amazing photographer and doula extraordinaire. So then Adam came back, and it was funny because the way that Adam describes it, he was like, you were totally fine when I left. And then by the time he got home, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I had kind of gone from like, oh, I'm totally fine, to where I kind of needed to like at least like focus through the contractions and not talk as much. It was kind of weird because I was very quiet. I just kind of like, especially during the contractions, I just needed to focus. And I want to say I look miserable in these pictures, but it was just more, I was very tired. The contractions for me never felt to the point where I didn't think I could handle them. It was just, they started to get more intense as things progressed. So my midwife comes over about 11:30, and probably about noon, she did my first cervix check to see how dilated I was. And I was already freaking 7 centimeters dilated. I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is great. This has been pretty smooth sailing. He's gonna be here by, I remember in my head thinking like 4 or 5 o'clock. I was wrong. He probably should have been born around like 5 or 6 if it had been a perfect timeline, but I'll get to that in a minute, kind of some of the factors we ran into. Being given the fact that I wanted gravity to kind of help do its thing, we were basically, moving around as much as we could. We did set up the birthing pool, so I would do some contractions there. I would do some again up against the couch. I would go in our bedroom a lot and kind of stand up against the bed and kind of put more of my weight on the bed and kind of just hang there. So basically anything besides laying down. Laying down was extremely uncomfortable for me. We did try a few contractions that way when we were trying to get him to kind of move. And I will say, if you experience contractions in a hospital bed laying on your back, freaking props to you, because that was the most painful way for me to have contractions. So then we were just kind of moving around. Adam had like ordered pizza for everybody. I didn't eat at this point. I was eating, but I didn't eat pizza. I had some like granola bars, we were listening to music, just hanging out. And then it was probably about, I think it was like 2 o'clock. My midwife came over and she was like, hey, I think things are, progressing. She was like, I'm gonna go ahead and call my team over. You guys are watching this. My midwife, my doula, my midwife's team could not have been a better group of people. So I guess to kind of explain this too, I really thought that we would have a water birth. When people picture home births, that's what they think of as water births. I loved the idea of a water birth. I had pictured our home birth having him be born in the tub. It did not work out that way. I started to get almost too relaxed in the pool. The pictures that I'm about to show, I was actually asleep in most of those. So I was that tired and that relaxed in the pool that I was falling asleep in between contractions. It was probably about 5 o'clock when I had my second cervix check and I was 10 centimeters. We ran into two things. Sully's head was not finished molding. So, you know, babies' heads their skull is not like a hard skull like ours. It's not fused together all the way, so it can literally slide and mold around so that it can fit through the birth canal. And with his head, you know, she had said, you know, she was like, you have kind of a shorter pelvis and his head is molding and then trying to get over that pubic bone. And later in one of my appointments, she kind of explained it with like a diagram of a pelvis and a baby and like what was happening. So he had some work to do. Again, thankfully I was in a situation where they were patient and let my body and my baby do its thing. Sully did a great job he was working probably just as hard as I was. We started doing a lot more like changing positions to try and help to get him to drop more and to get his head to finish molding so that it would fit through. So probably from the hours of like 5 to 9 o'clock, I don't even remember. I don't know how they went by so fast. I don't know what we did, but I remember thinking, looking at the clock at one point being like, oh my God, it's already, I think it was like 8:30 and I was like, why hasn't this baby come yet? Then it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock when I did start to have the urges to push. At this point, I was up against the bed and I had like my foot propped up on a stool. I was pushing during contractions and I was convinced he was coming. And they had said that, you know, she was like, his head is so close, like it's almost there. I don't know if at this point she had vocalized it yet, but at this point she knew that Sully's cord was probably wrapped around his neck. He was fine, his heartbeat was still great, my vitals were great. Everything was still smooth sailing. And at that point, when things started to get like where we knew he was coming, we ended up putting me on the floor on my back, kind of propped up, which in a home birth is very rare. But in that scenario, because we were probably looking at his cord being wrapped around, we did need it to be where she could, as soon as his head came out, she would be able to, you know, assess the situation and start unwrapping the cord. And I remember at that point being like, oh my God, Adam, we have to video this. I don't know if I'm going to share the video of it yet. I haven't decided. So then he started, you know, his head started coming out. And if you're not familiar with it, that is called the Ring of Fire.
The Ring of Fire.
I know that sounds terrible. I wish there was a better way to put that. Pretty much just all of those muscles, those tiny muscles that encompass your vagina stretching. And again, it wasn't a pain. It's just, it was like a burning. That's why they call it the Ring of Fire. They told me that it was about to happen. And then when it happened, I mean, I knew that was probably the most intense part of it all. His head comes out. I don't think I even knew his head had been delivered. Remember, I started having another contraction and they were like, this is the gentle part. This is the gentle part. And I was like, what? So I just didn't push. I just kind of let the contraction do its thing. And then the rest of his body came out. I swear to God, I didn't feel that. I don't know. It happened. I remember hearing Adam say, he's out, babe. And, you know, everyone was like cheering and, you know, and I was just, and then finally I looked, and then again in the video, you can see that I kind of finally realized that he was out. And I was like, oh my God. As soon as my midwife had cleared, you know, his airways and done that, she put him on my stomach, and then he instantly started crying. And that's kind of when it got to me. And I cried for just like a second, but then it was just more of like, oh my God, I can't believe I just that happened. I can't believe I just did that. I can't believe that it's over and that he's out. It was just a very, I described it as like a euphoric experience, and it was like the whole day, and then especially those moments was just like a very euphoric experience. So then Adam got to cut the cord, and then we kind of just like laid there, like we had called our parents, and we were kind of just like laying there, just, you know, taking it all in. So at that point I hadn't delivered the placenta yet. So Sully went to Adam, and then I went to the bathroom because my midwife was like, I think that might help things kind of, you know, get going. I was sitting on the toilet, and nothing was happening, and but I did start to feel I had lost, I just lost blood and everything. I was kind of feeling a little lightheaded, and then I had the urge to stand up and my placenta fell into the toilet. I know this probably sounds very TMI, but that's what happened. Then they got us all tucked into bed. The midwives kind of started cleaning up. It was so weird because the next day, like, you went out and our like entire house was like all put back together. You would have never known that we had just had a baby there. And then we started the newborn exams, which, again, kind of, it's the same thing that would have happened in a hospital. And it was such a weird thing because, and they stayed for several hours after he was born, because they were monitoring his vitals, my vitals, and then obviously getting everything cleaned up and making sure that everything was good. Then they left probably, like, he was born at 11:04, and they left probably about like 3:30, 3:45 in the morning. It was just so weird because then we went to sleep, and I remember like waking up and just being like, it was just such a weird thing already being like in your own house and you had just gone through this and then a baby's right there. It was really nice just to be able to be like in the comfort of our own home, and but still feeling very taken care of and safe and supported. And then my parents came over the next morning. Adam's mom came over that afternoon. It really was just, it was an amazing experience. And that is Sully's birth story.